France didn't have time to innovate in World War II, but their planes were still surprisingly impressive. Let's take a look at every French aircraft that took to the skies. Let's begin with fighters. WWII D520, this was arguably France's finest pre-war fighter. It was fast, maneuverable, and could certainly match the early Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Unfortunately, production ramped up too slowly. Had more been available in May 1940, things might have been very different. Morane-Saulnier MS-406. It was the most numerous French fighter used during the Battle of France. While rugged and highly reliable, it was severely underpowered. German pilots often considered it easy prey, especially once combat moved to higher altitudes. Bloch MB 152. This sturdy monoplane was designed for heavy armament. Unfortunately, serious design flaws and manufacturing delays crippled its early deployment. By the time it reached the front lines, it was struggling against the latest Axis threats. Up next, Potez 631, a slick twin-engine aircraft primarily used as a heavy fighter and reconnaissance platform. It excelled at long-range patrols. This design spawned a wide variety of successful derivatives used throughout the French air forces. Now, this is the Caudron C-714 Cyclone. This was a desperately fast but flimsy lightweight fighter. It was nicknamed the Flying Coffin by many French pilots. However, a small contingent of Polish volunteers flew them with remarkable courage during the 1940 campaign. Arsenal VG-33. This fighter promised exceptionally high performance thanks to its sleek wooden construction. It was fast enough to rival the WWII D520. Sadly, the production lines were completely halted before the design could ever enter widespread service. The next one, WWII D510, an earlier generation fighter, featuring fixed landing gear, which made it clearly obsolete by 1940. It was relegated to training and reserve units, though some still served briefly against the Germans before being sent to North Africa. Up next, Koolhoven FK-58. This was a Dutch design hurriedly purchased by France to bolster its thinning fighter squadrons. While quick to produce and reasonably fast, French pilots complained bitterly about its lack of armor and defensive systems. The next one, Potez 230. This was a promising but ultimately unsuccessful prototype fighter design. While intended to be a replacement for older biplanes, testing revealed it didn't meet the standards required for frontline combat operations in 1940. Let's move on to bombers. Liaison et Olivier Leo 451. This was perhaps France's most modern and effective bomber. Its speed allowed it to evade many enemy fighters. Despite being an excellent design, poor tactical deployment meant that it suffered incredibly high casualty rates during the Blitzkrieg. Amiot 351, a very sleek, fast twin-engine medium bomber. It was part of a major modernization program. However, manufacturing problems delayed its rollout, meaning only a tiny handful saw any action before the armistice in June 1940. Up next, Breguet 693. This was a twin-engine light bomber specifically designed for low-level attack roles. It was agile and highly maneuverable at low altitude, making it one of the most effective close support aircraft the French possessed. Potez 633, a light bomber variant of the versatile Potez 630 family. While many were exported, those remaining in France were pressed into service, primarily conducting medium-altitude bombing raids. Amiot 143, a massive, ungainly, mid-1930s bomber often described as resembling a flying apartment building. It was hopelessly slow and heavily outdated, making its crews easy targets for German fighters during the Battle of France. Then, Bloch MB 210. This was a large twin-engine night bomber, known for its rather unusual fixed landing gear. By the time the war began, its speed was inadequate and it was primarily used for training and transport roles. Up next, NC 223. Originally designed as a transatlantic mail plane, this massive aircraft was converted into a four-engine heavy bomber. One variant famously conducted a symbolic raid on Berlin in the opening stages of the war. Potez 540, known for its distinctive high wing and glazed nose, this multi-seat attack aircraft was already obsolete by 1939. It primarily saw service transporting troops and conducting colonial patrols outside of mainland France. Continuing with reconnaissance and observation, Potez 63.11, this was the dedicated reconnaissance version of the Potez 630 series. It featured a distinct, heavily glazed nose for optimal observation. It was one of the most important aerial spotters used by the French Army in 1940. Bloch MB 175, a successor to the famed 170 series. This was a highly modern 3-seat reconnaissance bomber. Only a few prototypes were operational when the fighting stopped, but its high performance was undeniable. Potez 637, an early reconnaissance model preceding the 63.11. It was used extensively for medium-range mapping and observation duties, forming the backbone of French aerial scouting units. Muro 117. This was a dependable high-wing monoplane used extensively for liaison and battlefield observation. Although technically obsolete, its reliability kept it in service well into the early phases of the war. Then, Potez 25, a legendary interwar biplane used by dozens of nations. By 1939, it was relegated entirely to advanced training schools and colonial policing duties in French Africa, proving its remarkable endurance. Potez 39, this high-wing monoplane, was a sturdy 2-seat observation platform. Though overshadowed by newer designs, it provided essential artillery spotting and liaison services throughout the early war period. Breguet 27. This strange-looking 2-seat reconnaissance biplane was unmistakable due to its totally exposed rear fuselage structure. It was ruggedly built, but terrifyingly slow when facing modern German fighters. Let's move on to naval aviation, seaplanes and flying boats. Latécoère 298, considered one of the best French naval aircraft of the era. This large, durable float plane excelled at anti-submarine patrol and coastal torpedo attack, seeing lengthy service with both the Free French and Vichy navies. Loire 130, this was the standard catapult-launched reconnaissance flying boat for the French Navy. It was robust, reliable, and equipped on almost every major French cruiser and battleship during the 1930s and 40s. Breguet 521, Bizerte, a massive, 4-engine flying boat used for long-range maritime patrol over the Atlantic. Its primary roles included anti-submarine warfare and long-distance search and rescue operations. Next, Liaison et Olivier Leo H470. This was a large 4-engine flying boat that was being considered for naval reconnaissance duties. However, development stalled, and only a single prototype was ever built and tested. Potez Cams 141, a gigantic 4-engine flying boat designed for extreme long-range naval reconnaissance missions. Despite its capability, only one example was actually operational when the war broke out. Then, Latécoère 302, originally designed for high-endurance transatlantic mail service, this heavy 3-engine flying boat was quickly adapted for military patrol duties, utilizing its incredible range over the ocean. Cams 55. This was an older biplane flying boat design. While slow and outdated, its rugged structure made it a remarkably dependable asset for basic coastal and harbor reconnaissance patrols. Next, Loire 70. This was a large 3-engine flying boat used for maritime reconnaissance. By 1939, it was starting to show its age, yet it still performed vital patrol duties in the Mediterranean and North Atlantic. Levasseur PL-7, an outdated, single-seat carrier aircraft used early in the war. It was quickly withdrawn from frontline service due to poor performance compared to land-based fighters. To wrap things up, transport, liaison and trainers. Caudron C-4045 Goéland, a highly successful, twin-engine light transport aircraft. Known for its reliability and excellent visibility, it served extensively for liaison and personnel movement throughout the war and into the post-war era. Caudron C-630 Simoun, a light, sleek, single-engine touring and liaison plane. It achieved fame when the famous writer and pilot Antoine de Saint-Exupéry used it for his long-distance flights. Then, Bloch MB 220. This was a highly successful French pre-war passenger airliner. With the outbreak of hostilities, it was immediately pressed into service as a crucial military transport aircraft. Potez 650, a large triple-engine aircraft specifically designed for military transport operations. It was utilized heavily for moving important supplies and personnel between bases. Potez 58, a small, dependable, three-seat monoplane used for essential communication and light observation duties across the French theatres of operation. Next, Morane-Saulnier MMS 230. This iconic parasol wing monoplane was the primary basic trainer for the French Air Force for over a decade. It was the aircraft on which most young French pilots learned their fundamental flying skills. Next, Caudron C-400 Phalène, a small, high-wing cabin monoplane used extensively for liaison and utility duties by the French military, valued for its simplicity and robustness. Potez 29, an older biplane transport design that offered remarkable payload capacity. While outdated, it remained a stalwart transport workhorse, particularly in the North African colonies. The next one, Farman F-224. This was a huge four-engine high-wing aircraft, originally designed for civil airliner service. It was quickly adapted to serve as a military transport, moving large quantities of troops and supplies.